Come on in. Class is about to start.
Right, so what are we doing today, dear?
Well, our lesson today is 278. If I am bound, my Father is not free. And I would like to tie that into yesterday's lesson, 277. Let me not bind your son with laws that I've made. The whole idea here is that if I think that I am bound, like I have to wear a winter coat when it's cold. That's one good example. If I think I'm bound by the world, I'm not free. That's obvious, right? But the hidden premise here is I am part of my Father. So whatever I'm doing to myself, whatever beliefs I'm putting on myself, I'm putting on my Father.
Right.
I remember when I was a young child, studying the Bible and all that, they would say things like, well, God he had to make sure that his son, Jesus, was tortured and murdered to what? To
Pay the price.
Pay the price, that's the word. And it's like, really? Does God have to follow laws like that? Does God need to do that retribution and punishment thing? No, that was, according to the course, that's not the way things work. Now, I just want to say a good word for the Bible and the way it's been interpreted is what I learned in New Thought, the New Thought movement, is that the Bible is a history of humanity's, or a segment of humanity's relationship with God, told from the point of view of humanity. Mm-hmm. So, at first he was like an angry, jealous God, smite this one, smite that one. Well, that was just projection. And the Course is telling us, it's okay. Now we've grown to the awareness that God is love and nothing but love, and we're part of God's mind. We are love. We're only under the laws of love. And therefore, there's nothing that deserves punishment. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's very early on in the workbook. The second set of lessons would start with, I am the light of the world, the light of the world. Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. The light of the world brings peace to every mind. Let me not forget my function. My only function is one God gave me. And then it says, God gives me only happiness.
Yeah.
So part of what he's trying to accomplish with us is that you may look at yourself and think, well, yeah, I'm a sinner, or I'm bound by all these laws, and my body's telling me you may think it may make sense for you to think of yourself that way. But when you recognize that by thinking of yourself that way, that's how you see God, then you can see that idea of sin doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, why would God be upset about something that doesn't really exist?
Right.
Right? So understanding that how we think of ourselves is how we're going to see everything is the key to our freedom.
Right.
In every situation.
Now, this is a huge step, this idea that we're not bound by laws we made.
That's right.
First of all, we have to realize that the laws we made include things like gravity.
Right.
Huge.
Well, like he said, I'm glad you tied this to the lesson before, because the lesson before said, let me not imagine I bound him by the laws I made to rule the body, to make the body more secure. When I read that, it was like, right, myself, my true self is free.
Yeah, right.
Right? Mm-hmm. But again, and I think what you were indicating, this is a process whereby little by little, we let it in and we go, okay, I can change my mind. I don't necessarily have to change the world, but I can change my mind and everything changes.
You just reminded me of something I learned in high school biology, and I hope I get the words right. It was something like phylogeny recapitulates ontogeny, something like that. And what it meant was the embryo repeats the whole of its evolution. So in our embryonic stage, we have fish gills and things like that.
Yeah.
So what you're pointing out is that each human being recapitulates. So this is a theory. This is just me guessing at this, but it makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Each human being moves from the ego to the oneself in its own development, in
Yeah.
our own development. So we start out thinking that vengeance is a good idea, anger is helpful, all of those things that we ascribe to God in the old days, we believe about ourselves when we start out as little human beings. And then as we grow and develop with the Course, we recognize that we're one with God and there's nothing here that deserves punishment.
Right.
Now there's something that is deep in these two lessons, which is, you could probably tell us just where to find it. It says, question every value.
Yep.
Every value. Question every value you ever held.
At the beginning of 24,
Yeah.
it talks
I
about
knew you'd know.
the hiddenness for this special identity. That
Yeah.
What we don't see is the hidden guilt behind wanting to establish that hidden identity.
Yeah.
But I think that a basic principle in this is that if I believe I made a will that opposes God,
Mm-hmm.
if that's what I believe, I
Mhm.
believe then in opposition, then the world that I'm making up and the body identity I'm making up has to be one that is in opposition to everything.
Yeah.
Because that's where my world is going to come from. So it's the environment, it's my children, it's my whatever. It's
Yeah.
something outside of me that's opposing my peace. It would have to be that way from the ego standpoint.
Yeah.
But if you reason it out as a loving child, you'd
Mhm.
say, would God really oppose me? Is that the kind of world? Is that what creation did?
Yeah.
Was a creation
Mhm.
of little things opposing little things everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem to be true of God? Well, of course not.
Yeah. Right.
So when we think we can indict ourselves in sin, if we realize we're indicting God in that, then it begins to not make sense.
Yeah.
If I'm bound, my Father's bound.
Yeah.
If I'm bound, the Creator's bound. Well, that makes no sense. It's the Creator. He's the source.
And so the corollary of that is, if God is free and powerful, which kind of go together,
Yeah.
so are we.
Exactly.
And again, that hidden premise is, I'm part of the mind of God.
Yeah.
That can't be forgotten.
Yeah.
And yet we think that we're a body. As long as we believe that we're a body,
Mm-hmm.
we are holding ourselves to laws that have to do with the body itself.
Right.
So the laws of the body are all about its comfort, protection, and enjoyment. And those are idols.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, this is a very big step the Course is asking us to take.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is forgive ourselves and other people for the little things that we think they did. Oh, he turned left in front of me too fast. Or for you Brits, turn right in front of me too fast. It's like, we really need to forgive the little tiny things. It's like Gulliver. Gulliver's Travels, and how he was held by all those tiny, tiny threads.
Right.
As we clip each tiny thread, we become free.
Right.
There's no one big rope holding us.
Yeah. We talked about that in my other group this morning. It's like, because somebody who was in our group had just passed away. She got cancer and she died almost within a week or so. And then the other person now she got breast cancer, and then she used radiation to get rid of it, and then that gave her skin cancer. And what we realized is that these big things come up.
No, they do.
Like death.
Yeah.
We lose people through death. The body seems to be sickness. And by the time that happens, that's been building up for a long, long time. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why what you're saying, as I hear you saying, is that these little moments to moments to moments, when we can see our thinking
Mm-hmm.
is askewed,
Mm-hmm.
that somehow I'm bound by these physical laws I made up.
Yeah.
And that means God is bound in those little in those little situations. We build up
Mm-hmm.
enough strength so when death comes, that makes us think we've lost somebody or something, or when sickness comes, then hopefully at that point we have the ability to heal that idea because we've been working on it.
And by then we recognize that we're not bodies.
Yeah.
You know, that's what happens when we do the forgiveness over and over and again. We recognize that I am spirit. I am mind.
Yeah.
I'm not this lump of stuff.
Right. So what did you say the three things the body, or that from the ego standard, more secure? What were those?
Comfort, protection, and enjoyment. That's
Right.
from chapter 18.
That's right. So that only comes, so does this make sense? If I've identified myself as a body,
Uh-huh.
right? If that's my identity,
Mm-hmm.
then of course I'm going to make that body more secure, more whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, actually, the Course is saying that your body will be just fine if the atonement is your only purpose.
Yeah.
But if I'm coming from the idea that I am a body, if I'm identified, well, then of course I'm going to be just concerned with my comfort, my safety, my pleasure. But if we realize that doesn't work, that it's a temporary, it gives some temporary relief, but it runs out,
Yeah.
things happen, then it's not like the body's not important then, but the body becomes a communication instrument.
Well, that's what we've been reading in these, like, what is the body?
Right.
And it's implied in the section, what is the Christ?
Right.
The body is useful
Right.
to communicate the Christ in you, the Christ in me, or you could say the Holy Spirit in you, the Holy Spirit in me, and in everyone.
Right.
And that's a completely different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So from that mindset, somebody who irritates me, doesn't that sound like they did it to me?
Exactly.
No. I made the feeling of irritation by making up a rule that they shouldn't, put their fingers on the chalkboard and make that screech. Okay, so I made up that rule. Now when they do that, my body is telling me they deserve resentment.
Right.
They deserve to be, they're wrong. Who does that really bind? Does it bind the person who did the sin, or does it bind me? Well, I'm trying to bind them, but really, I'm the one who's putting myself, the Course calls that hell. It's a small thing, a little bit of resentment, but it is not the awareness of our Christhood. If it's not the awareness of our Christhood, that's what the Course calls hell.
Yeah.
So let me not bind another person with laws I've made, and let me not bind myself with laws I've made.
Yeah, and that's so we've often talked about the structure of practice of the workbook and what does that entail. And it's saying there's this morning and evening, you have a longer practice. Throughout the day, you try and remember this idea, hold on to it. Like, if I'm bound, my Father's not free. Try and hang on to that idea as much as we can. When we're tempted to lose our peace, that's a big time to practice. The issues become very intense at that moment.
And you can see them because they've come up from the unconscious. It's like they're formed from a belief that is unconscious.
Yeah.
But what we call temptation is like that moment of resentment that I feel towards someone else. That's what the Course calls temptation. It doesn't call it a sin. It's a temptation to believe that we're bodies and that we can be hurt.
Right.
And that somebody else has to pay a price.
Yeah. So the mind training then is these longer practice periods. Try to remember the idea throughout the day.
Yeah.
When we've lost our peace, as soon as we've lost our peace, then it's time to practice.
Yeah.
And then it said hourly remembrances. You stop once an hour,
Yeah.
and you look at the hour that went past, look at what needs to be healed, that issue, try and clear that up the last hour, and then move ahead free of that last hour. And that's how we break the chains of time. Slowly, 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 one circumstance. Because that's how gentle and loving the Course is. It understands we're defended against the truth.
Right.
And so, but we have to put in the time. We have to develop the ability to say, you know what, I'm attracted to this thought system. I'm attracted to guilt. Somewhere inside of my mind, I must be valuing this, because otherwise, why would I be experiencing it? And that's what's gentle, though. That's what's loving, right? You know, it's like somebody who comes into treatment all of a sudden, a 12-step program. They don't try and solve all their marriage problems, all of their economic problems, all their social problems. It's like, deal with yourself right now, here.
And we're all in treatment here. This is our
we're all in treatment.
This is our treatment manual.
You're right. So solve the problem here first.
Yeah.
And then you know that you've actually solved it, because why? Because now I have the ability to share it with others. I have the ability to apply it to everything.
Yeah.
And that to me is what's so loving about the Course. It's this really gentle, step by step. Just it's like the Holy Spirit is saying, okay, are you ready for a change?
Yeah.
Not yet? Okay.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
How's that working out for you?
Right. Step back.
Step back.
Yep.
How's that working out? And then slowly. And by slowly, I mean, we can have each instant free us.
Yeah, and we do have to do the work.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, we can snooze. You're not going to get anywhere by snoozing. But, you know, at the same time as it's little by little by little, cutting those Gulliver's threads, at the same time, the Course is putting out the end goal. And that's what's here. The laws I've made are binding me to my belief that I'm a physical body, and are binding me to my frustration, resentment, disappointment, anger, and most of all, fear. That's what he's talking about. So there's another lesson, lesson 76, which is, I am under no laws but God's. And I'm going to just read this, and you see how extreme it is. It's pretty extreme. I'm just going to read a paragraph or less. This is not today's lesson. This is from 200 days ago. We will begin the longer practice periods today with a short review of the different kinds of laws we believe we must obey. These would include, for example, the laws, in quotes, of nutrition, of immunization, of medication, and of the body's protection in innumerable ways. Think further. You believe in the laws of friendship, of good relationships, and reciprocity. And it goes on. So, and on the previous page, it says, you really think that you would starve unless you have stacks of green paper strips and piles of metal discs. And now it would be like little plastic cards, right? But it's going directly to our beliefs that we need physical things to take care of us physically. And like you're talking about the Course being so gentle, there is a very clear direction to the Course that the whole purpose is to get rid of fear. So if you feel like you need a shot or you need to have a winter coat, well, then do it.
And it's not just feeling. Remember when we read in the text section the other day, for the atonement to be efficacious, for the atonement to have effect, it has to come in a form that you can recognize as reducing the fear you're experiencing.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I take medications because it reduces my fear.
Right.
Like what he's saying is, you can change this all with your mind, and that's what we're trying to do. Make another choice. But along the way, practically speaking, if you're trying to do it solely with your mind, right? And you're still close to this belief system of the ego, you could just be increasing your egocentrism.
Right. You could be increasing your fear.
And you're increasing your fear. So whatever we need to do to release ourselves from fear,
Right.
because we can't learn in a state of fear.
Yeah.
So, material help for other people, some physical help for other people, helping them with their economic situation, all those things are love. Those things are atonement.
Right.
You can't just stand there and go, well, it's all unreal, get over it. That's not very loving.
So I just thought of a situation where if we had attained the state that Jesus did, we might see a person drowning, and we'd lift them out of the water with our mind. But where we are now, not being that, maybe some of you on this call are there, but I know you and I are not. If we saw a child drowning in a kiddie pool, we'd jump in and save them, right? Yeah. So there are physical correlates to the atonement. There's physical expressions of it. He's asking us not to get stuck in the physical. He's asking us to free ourselves from the belief that we are bodies and that physical things are what we need. Right. Because then we'll just be stuck in a hamster wheel.
Right. So an example of that perhaps would be I begin to see myself in what any sane person would begin to see as an abusive relationship.
Okay.
There's this person's abusive, they're always angry, they're hateful, they don't seem to be whatever. Well, then I have to turn to the Holy Spirit and say, is this a place for me to really be? Can I be here for this person and help them heal from that? Or is the most loving thing for me to do is to leave this relationship because it's just being used to reinforce our delusions.
And so in the case where you're putting yourself there, to reinforce your delusions. For example, you're the hero, or even you like being a victim.
Whatever the motive is in that, we have. That's why we're training the mind to see what's my real attraction, and exactly that I can. If I want to believe I'm the rescuer, I'm gonna. The more you hurt me, the better it is. Right. Yeah. But that's where we're training our minds to see: is this where I should be putting my energy, Holy Spirit?
Right.
Because right away Jesus said in the text, "I will direct you to which miracles to perform, because I know that where you give them, they will be received, and where they'll be received, they'll be given back."
Right.
So if we're constantly just in stressful relationships all of the time, then we have to take a look at that.
And they're not only just given back, they're given forward. They're paid forward in multiple ways.
Yeah.
So it's that's where the chain of atonement is welded, I think he said, is when we listen to when we should do something this way or that way. How should I react in this situation? But we have to start with, what do we believe we are, right?
That's what it all starts with.
It all starts with that. And so, let me not bind your son with laws I made. If I am bound, my Father is not free. Both of those lessons are based on the idea that we are the immortal one Son of God.
Right.
There's one Son of God. There's one creation. We're part of that one creation. Well, belief that I'm a body is so different from that. Belief that I'm a body is I'm a little tiny speck in the universe, rather than I am the mind that's emanating the universe.
That's right. And he's so clear, like in that lesson, Miracles Are Seen in the Light, he's saying, and he says it in those lessons of the Holy Spirit, to have, give all to all. He said, the first step in all of this, and you have to make, nobody else can make it, not even God can make it for you. The first step is for you in faith, and usually because everything else is not working at the moment, So, but you need to, on faith, say, I'm not a body.
Yeah.
And once we say that,
Mm-hmm.
then through faith,
Mm-hmm.
we can be learning that we are free. Notice when he says, I'm not a body, I'm free.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily affirm that what that free being is. He just says you're free.
Uh-huh.
So when I begin to understand when I'm upset in this situation and I change my mind
Mm-hmm.
and I freed myself from that stress, then I'm reflecting my true self.
Right.
And,
Because you're back in a state of love.
right. But I had the ability to free myself
Right.
at that moment, and now I'm reflecting my true being. And then when we begin to see that we can help others free themselves,
Yeah.
that even expands it further and
Right.
further until finally all we're offering is forgiveness.
Right.
All we are offering is peace. There's nothing else.
Right. So we can look at the world and we can see and look at our own past, most likely, and we can see how when we think we're a body, we are really stuck. If I think I'm a body and I need those green paper strips and piles of discs, those discs don't do much more anymore. When I think that I need stuff or I need something about my body to be different, when I'm focused on my body, that in itself is such a contraction, such a hiding of the truth, of the power of the Christ that's within us.
Yeah.
That we have access to when we say, I'm not a body, I'm part of the mind of God. Holy Spirit, help me to do what I should do, to think what I should think, so that I and everyone else is blessed.
Yep. And so at that moment, I'm valuing my freedom, not my bondage.
Yeah.
I'm not setting up a thing of I'm bound by these situations, but since I'm bound, I can be the hero. Or maybe you are meant to stay there and help it. Who knows? That's why there's guidance.
Yeah, right.
That's why the Holy Spirit has to say, not only does the Holy Spirit have to give you your answers, he's the one who poses the questions. Right?
Yeah, right.
Like we have to turn to him and say, define this situation for
Help
me.
me.
Really show me what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Because why? Because I've said through faith, I'm willing to not see myself as a body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to believe that I can free myself
Right.
from this situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was talking to a course student the other day, and we're in our 70s now. We're getting older, and I'm grieving the loss of my vitality. But that's the stuff that you can catch.
Yeah.
And say, why am I grieving the loss of that? Did I lose my true self? I mean, it's that kind of...
And our awareness of our true self has grown so much, So it's like if we really focus on what's happening in truth, the expansion of our awareness of our true self, it's like, wow, it's the opposite of losing vitality.
Yeah, it is. Because it's the vitality of the mind.
Yeah. It's the awareness of spirit.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the connection between these two lessons here, because again, I think he's over and over saying, well, you may be able to think this of yourself, but if you recognize how you're seeing yourself is how you see Source and how you see God, and you can say, well, that doesn't make sense. To see God as bound is like a contradiction in terms.
Yeah, it's like the old Greeks.
Yeah.
The old Greek gods. Or the Norwegian gods. I see we have a Norwegian on the call. It's like those guys were bound, Only love is unbound.
Yep.
Yeah. So bless you all.